Welcome to this session of Talking Tech, Women and Girls in ICT. My name is Oseremen, and today I am delighted to be representing Warwick University, and I'm excited to be having a discussion about tech and tech careers with Torgyn Erland. Talking Tech is a series celebrating girls and women in tech being recorded around the world between Girls in ICT Day 2020 and Girls in ICT Day 2022. Girls in ICT Day is an international day marked on the fourth Thursday of each April. The objective of Girls in ICT Day is to help to create a global environment that empowers and encourages girls and young women to consider studies and careers in the growing field of information communication technologies. The Talking Tech series is brought to you by the ITU, UNICC, and the Office of the United Nations Secretary General's Envoy on Youth, and is in support of Equals, the global partnership for gender equality in the digital age. Warwick University is pleased to be a partner on this session today. The goals of this series is to interest and inspire young girls and younger women with information about a range of ICT careers that can be had, bring for a broader audience some of the role model women in tech and share information about their career journeys and work, offer diverse examples of how ICT is being used to support achievements of the Sustainable Development Goals and other United Nations goals. Showcase initiatives that are working with girls to support them in ICT studies or future ICT career. Provide girls and young women in tech with a leadership opportunity to represent and promote a girls in tech organization with which they are involved and promote this to a broader international audience. To kick off this session, I'm going to introduce you to Torgan Erland. Would you like to introduce yourself, Torgan?
Hi guys, I'm Dr. Torgan Erland. I'm a data scientist and a machine learning enthusiast, as well as a founder of Next Generation Programmers Initiative.
That's wonderful. For me, I'm really excited about this interview, and I'm really glad you granted this to us. And just to carry on, before I ask you some questions, I just wanted to let you know that this is an area that I'm passionate about as well myself. And a more gender balanced tech sector is something that I feel should be addressed in the world. Just to start off this session, I want to find out about your interests and how you got into technology.
Well, I probably should start a little bit with the context. I grew up in a rural developing country way before we had access to personal computers and
Hmm.
broadband, just so remote that the rural village was. And I liked math and physics. I liked tinkling around things. But without having internet and being so detached from the larger world and its advances, I think was probably a good thing for me because I actually had no clue that technology or IT or considered male-dominated sectors in developed world. So to me, I only learned that when I was interviewing for roles and actually at Warwick when I was doing my undergraduate degree. So I had grown up without those boundaries that are uh, now self-enforcing themselves by lack of representation, and that made me feel fearless and confident about pursuing something that I'm actually interested in without worrying about not seeing many examples.
That's great. That's honestly really great because you're really setting an example for all of us that are, looking to begin our careers in technology. I guess for me, I'm doing my undergrad in Warwick University at the moment, in management of information systems and digital innovation. And my undergrad was in psychology and business, and I didn't know I would be in tech for my master's. It was just something I stumbled upon, and it is very overwhelming when you realize that most of the people in your cohorts are males, and you know and then when you apply for job interviews, you look at the job description, and you just think to yourself, can I actually fit into this industry? So honestly, I want to commend you for being a really good role model, even from listening to you speak, and just from knowing what you do. I'm really excited that you are setting the path for us. So,
Thank you.
how was your path from when you began to where you are right now?
I wanted to program because I figured out that's the way you can sometimes leverage computers to do some thinking for you or some counting for you. And as a teenager, I realized that I didn't know enough English to understand programming. So
Mm.
I had to teach myself English, and I was very lucky alongside. This is not my to my credit. It's actually the people I was surrounded at US Peace Corps volunteers that came to our
Mm.
village and broadened our horizons, and just opportunity to study it. So I'm not very good with languages, but I had to learn English so I can be programming, because unfortunately there are not that many popular languages which have support, which are designed for not English
Mm.
thinker in mind.
Of
and
course.
and that combo, I guess, broadened my opportunities. So I ended up studying in the UK, actually at University of Warwick for my undergrad in engineering. And then I didn't particularly think, again, because I came from such a different background and such a different environment, that I just thought of myself as an average student, average person trying to complete their coursework, until I participated and ended up winning in a UK nationwide competition a title of IT Computer Science Undergraduate of the Year.
That's
And that
amazing.
opened a few doors for me. So again, I was very lucky. Um, I managed to, during my undergraduate times, to intern with world-leading organizations every summer, taking up a new internship project where that's how I learned about machine learning.
Mm.
So then I came back to Warwick to do a PhD in machine learning. And applications there were slightly different. It was in biomedical engineering and healthcare. So I moved
Mm.
from twinkling with computers and the hardware to actually thinking, how can we leverage some of that statistical learning and the computing crunch power to help doctors, to help biomedical engineers, to make more informed decisions.
Mm. That's
Yeah.
amazing.
But how about you? Like, when did you get and how did you get involved in tech, and what do you like the most about it?
Um, well, like I said, the my first experience, with truly understanding tech as a whole, has been during my undergraduate degree. Although I do have some previous work experience as a B2B IT sales and marketing executive, where I kind of learned a lot about, IT infrastructure and what these different things do: ERP systems, unified endpoint management systems, and SAP and Oracle and all these big names. I still didn't feel like I was in my own IT career. So now, having that previous experience and that previous knowledge kind of gave me just that inquisitiveness to want to know a lot more about, what really happens behind the scenes. And for me now, doing this degree and, learning Python programming and being able to create the back end of a program and create a graphical user interface is so rewarding. Even in the smallest sense, just being able to run a program and it works is
That
so
is so
exciting for me.
commendable.
Yes, yes, it's so exciting. I've never experienced a bigger rush in my life. So I think that is what is kind of pushing me to continue in this way, and that's what's making me realize that this is something that is truly for me.
Yeah.
So, I wanted to ask you because I know, the work environment can be really engulfing, especially in tech that is, constantly moving and constantly evolving. What sort of activities or what other activities do you have beyond being a data scientist that, you would like to talk? Are there any
Yeah.
activities you'd like to talk about
Well,
that you do outside of
actually,
work?
I like to view myself as a teacher. Yes, I am teaching computers to learn from data, to solve some of the toughest problems that organizations around the world face. But then
Mm,
I'm also teaching kids to learn programming. And most
mm,
recently, after becoming a mom, I'm just seeing how that sort of bridges together. And you can almost see I created this neural network, like I virtually did. It's my blood genes. And then see how initially it's so its initiation state is so rudimentary, and then how rapidly it's evolving and growing. And sometimes so my family is often teases me saying that, yeah, Torgan, you cannot really experiment on the child. I'm like, well, it's a cognitive experiment, right? I'm just saying them that, I'll teach them all the colors in English, but then one color in a different language, just so that to see how they would react and respond to that. or some of the
I love
aspects.
how you've developed your computational thinking and you're actually applying it to your life around you. It's beautiful.
Well, it's that's a beauty about studying something as general engineering, like which Warwick offered as an undergrad, because you get to see all the parallels, because the same laws that govern the fluid dynamics, they often apply in swarm optimization, and then they often apply in mechanical engineering, and then in electronics engineering. Often the parallels are there. And then broader sense, it's uh, advances in data science or machine learning that we're talking about. They're about capturing some patterns from the data. And
Mm.
our main example of that is a human brain. So we've already done that. The nature did it for us. Now we're
Yes.
trying to reproduce at a very small sort of proof of concept level, a very rudimentary way of exploring that. And we're already finding it extremely powerful and helping us do our day-to-day jobs better. So
Yes.
now, you asked me about the activities beyond. So I mentioned
Mhm.
teaching. I'm actually a founder of Next Generation Programmers. That came as something that I did during my PhD, together with a fellow Warwick student. Then she was doing her master's in English at the University of Oxford, and we decided to bridge something. So I obviously, because of my where I'm coming from, was so natural. I'm not the brightest kid in the street, and yet I've been privileged to be trusted to do some of the things I'm doing now. And I thought the other kids in the same villages across the world in developing countries really could see machine learning, programming, computing as a way not just to expand their knowledge, but also as a way from poverty, as a way towards
Mm.
social, economical security that a lot of us are lacking. And given that a lot of work over computers and how this current pandemic had proven it is done online and remotely, there's no geographical boundaries really.
Yes.
So if you have the skill, they can be applied in Australia, in US, in New Zealand, in I don't know, in Antarctica. It's about sort of being able to have the right context to work with. So, Next Generation Programmers was aiming to empower kids to think about potential career in programming or a university degree. And to do that, you have to have two. It's not enough to teach people programming. You also have to teach them technical English, because a lot
Mm.
of resources that are available online that allow yourself and people like me and you to go into Stack Overflow and see what others, how the others coded something up, that's very limited in other
Yes.
languages, or it would be limited to particular cases. And so the vast knowledge of humans has been sort of staying within that environment. And for people who are just learning English in the early secondary school years, this is particularly tough to go into and then trying to access some of the resources. So when we say, oh, there's so many educational resources, there's a BBC Bite Size, there's Khan Academy, there's Coursera, I did my course and I've taught myself XYZ, that's actually not available to you at that broader scale if you don't speak English. So,
Mm.
and that's perhaps that my co-founder Kate was able to bring in is the tailored curriculum for beginners, technical English for beginners. And then we were putting this together as a bespoke curriculum. And University of Warwick had actually some really, really strong expertise around developing curriculum for early undergraduate and also pre-university students. So we got some remarkable help and in testing this out. And essentially got our teacher training essentially developed through that. And then we piloted in 2016, and the pilot was supported by University of Warwick. We won a Lord Roots Memorial Award for next
Wonderful.
generation programming, which allowed us to also help with some assets. So bringing in some laptops to the school, and also travel scholarships for Warwick students to actually go and teach.
Mm.
And then we also won McKinsey Next Generation Women Leaders Award, and again use the a little bit of prize money that were given to fund this initiative. And something that we've noticed was remarkable about it is that because we didn't really approach this as a way, selection criteria were completely gender neutral.
Mm.
And it was just about how we can do some logic and logical thinking. And the over 70% of the participants and people who applied actually were girls. So we weren't
Wow.
necessarily making this a girl specific thing, but that's how it happened. And it just reminded me again what beauty it is when you are not growing up in society that has those boundaries ingrained.
Mm.
So I'm really super excited. The initiative continues today. We've graduated over 350 pupils and at various ages from 11 to 15. And I'm hoping that we can continue seeing some impact of that and expanding it into other countries.
That's absolutely wonderful. That's a very altruistic thing that you're doing. And, it shows that you're, taking your experience and the difficulties that you went through, entering this career, and you're trying to use that to make the journey a lot easier for, people that were in your position back then. It's beautiful to see, and you're really making a difference. I can only imagine, the impact you're really leaving in, the people that you're helping within this initiative. So it's wonderful.
Thank you very
Absolutely
much, but I'm
wonderful.
equally grateful with people I'm working with on that.
Yes, yes, definitely. So, what do you like most about, being a data scientist?
Yeah.
What's the most rewarding part of it for you?
Well, I think it's the the actual way you can view data science, or especially data science consulting that I'm involved in, is translating complex phenomena and processes into models, so that then they can use those models to help some of the world's largest organizations and companies to solve some of the very tough problems. So it's really a privilege because you get a chance to drive impact with giving
Hmm.
people confidence that they're making the right decision because there's all this data that speaks to that, or being able to say, hey, listen, these are some of the stereotypes you have, but actually the same data you hold is telling XYZ. So I think machine learning and data science, they're already changing everything. They're transforming how businesses are run. There's a whole advanced analytics divisions in organizations around the world. It's also
Hmm.
transforming the public sector, the governments, the ministries, the organizations, the schools. And as more of our lives becomes digital, this data gathering and data processing, all that is happening in background, it's actually, it's just going to go higher. And if we were to leverage it for something useful, not just to tailoring adverts, nothing against tailoring adverts, but it's something to put it through. I'll give you an
Yeah.
example. So many, even developing countries, have brought in medical healthcare records, electronic medical healthcare records and systems.
Hmm.
So now, even in developing countries, you go into the village surgery, and the doctor has a computer where they register you and they say, okay, you are XYZ, and then they take some notes. However, the degree to which that has been leveraged to do something useful for the same customers, apart from record keeping, has been limited by our inability to translate that. And of course, there's also the whole set of international standards and ethics around medical data. But even in the UK, with machine learning and data science, I got an opportunity during my PhD to help NHS doctors to analyze that routine data, nothing particularly special, something that's about your visit, the temperature you had, how you felt about it, and so forth. That those little signature traces, to be able to predict likelihood of having that person having a type 2 diabetes 10 years on. And uh, uh, even a baseline machine learning system is able to do that with 85% accuracy
That
if we
is
get the story.
amazing.
And,
Yeah.
and and this is just something like all of a sudden you can come to the doctor and they say, by the way, last time we've seen you, and people like who are in your age, weight category, non-smokers, smokers, that sort of a profile, they also have been at a higher risk of diabetes. Why don't we get you checked out? And this is when you've really start leveraging the data. So I think there's enormous way in which we should be using machine learning to transform this, but it also comes in at the risk of people relying too much on machine learning models. And I honestly think that any decision, this is a decision support system, it's not a decision maker. And for really to bring that message in, I am passionate about lowering boundaries of machine learning
Mm.
systems.
Yeah.
and understanding of that. So explainability and transparency are my core research and working interests.
I'm glad you mentioned this. I'm glad you mentioned this because this is something that I've actually thought about. With the system that you just mentioned, it's definitely has the potential to replace an actual doctor, and machine learning algorithms have the ability to predict and do all these things that human beings can do, and you know, a lot of jobs and a lot of people have become redundant as a result of machines actually taking over their jobs. So this is something that I wanted to find out, from you, that you're on the inside and you're seeing these changes happen rapidly within your work environment. Um, how has it made you feel about your own, job security? I know because you're the one sort of doing the creating, it's like, yeah, you feel safe because you're on the other side of things. But
Well,
how how does it feel, thinking that maybe at some point in the future your job might be replaced as well? How does it
I
feel?
I absolutely think that if data scientists like me do our job well, we should make ourselves redundant. But but on the other hand, I like the way you're phrasing about the fear and the security and so forth. I actually don't agree with that.
Mm,
So yes, there are some um, computer vision algorithms that are able to identify or pinpoint a location of a particular, I don't know, a tumor better than a radiographer would be at a far faster pace, and well, as accurately as a radiographer would be at a faster
mm,
pace and without the fatigue and human errors. But machines are only as good as the underlying data is, and they're always vulnerable to that part. COVID changes of the background data, we know that any shifts, any biases which are dominant over in the old historic data, all of that will not be fixable without humans. So we very much should work in a symbiosis where a machine is supporting sort of automated things, so some mindless thinking that you do, and essentially that you can leverage, and you can be 100 times faster or better, or have that sense check, and then uh, at the same time it's actually humans that we would need to make some of very difficult decisions on the edge cases and the boundaries. A tangible example of this, the advances in healthcare that I've just mentioned to you about
mm,
radiography or type 2 diabetes and primary care data prediction, that all is great, but it only would apply on a minority cohorts, minority populations, which have a lot of examples in the data for machines to learn from. But minorities, unusual patterns, people with rare diseases, uh, people who are not following the majority pattern, so don't have enough examples of that, they machines would struggle. They may it might result in not only the bias itself would prevent either having an accurate score or confidence score. So that is when you need human professionals and experts to actually doing this high value added aspects of it. And then there's also
definitely.
part where machine learning is actually creating jobs. If you think of it as a way in which we are finally moving away from report taking to actually doing something exciting with data, being able to study, when every NHS nurse who would feel that the fact that she's typing those details by patient in is actually helping not only that customer, it's not about reporting, but it's actually helping the science that is, and the scientific, powering this, putting foundation of the scientific studies that are going to happen from 5, 10, and 10 years from now on. I think that's pretty empowering.
Definitely, that definitely is. So, this series is about girls and women in technology, and I just wanted to ask you, do you have any career advice for girls and, younger women that are looking to start their career in tech?
Yes, I'm not so much of an advice, because I don't know if that's sort of that everybody's journey is different.
Mm-hmm.
But particularly with programming and computing, it's very, it could feel very intimidating. The jargon, the terminology, anything without the background, the sort of, are you using the right tool? Does it matter which tool you use? And you go on forum and people are talking in almost obscure details and different language. And you feel that, well, maybe I don't understand, maybe I don't belong, and how do I fit in here? So those are um, boundaries where I think that having a little bit of confidence and thinking I don't have to be perfect, I'm just going to go and try this. You may not know exactly how everything that's going on inside, but I'm going to try and write this program that does this one thing, and then from there building it. I think that's a attitude that helped me a lot. Leveraging the sort of incremental learning and trying and test and trial is so beautifully could be so easily could be implemented in computing and learning. I also think that yes, reading books and studying the foundations of algorithms and data structures is important, but equally or even more important are some hands-on experiences. Even if it means that you sign up on was an unpaid internship for and try to learn. It's about that's getting some mentoring and getting to use the industry standard tools for programming, compilation, debugging, and deploying. And this is not just machine learning, this is any tech. So the role of internships and practical opportunities, I think, is very important here. I know Warwick does some outstanding work in helping students to be aware of the opportunities and taking advantage of those opportunities, whether it's with Warwick Manufacturing Group or there's research institution around. But there's also a lot of tech companies trying it, and especially for us girls, I think an important part is just applying. Yes, you're gonna not get into everything you apply, but keep trying and doing that. Now, another part of it is the imposter syndrome. And this is particularly relevant for if you stay in academia longer and start researching. I remember going into machine learning conference in 2012, and I was very new to the field. And there were nearly 8,000 researchers, and everything seemed so complex, and some things just flew past my head. And I was sitting with an elderly gentleman next to me, and in the break, he said, "Did you understand that?" I said, "Not really, I don't think so." And he said, "I don't too." And I founded this conference. And he's one of the most formidable and well-respected world researchers in artificial intelligence. And he says that the field got so specialized and so diverse and so broad and big right now that it's difficult for anybody to know that sum of what the community doing, and that's the beauty of it. And it's okay not to understand everything. And with that, I tend to go in and just asking questions. So whenever you see somebody who seems to be your role model, or somebody successful, or somebody that you think is really achieving within your field of interest, talk to them. No, don't only ask about what they do or how they got there, but also what are their dreams and what are their fears? What are their insecurities? Where are they heading, and what do they think there would be next barriers? I mean, often I find in the discussions people say, yes, you know what, I've been working for the past 10 years and I didn't actually take a pause to rest. I want to retire. And you think, well, I don't want to be you. I don't want to lose that energy. But on the other hand, it's like to others, like, what are your dreams? Like, actually, I want to run a flower shop. And everybody has their own insecurities and fears and worries, and that's only human.
What you just said is really inspiring, which is and I think you're right. It's sometimes you have some conversations with people and they're saying some really complex things, even with the programming that I really enjoy. I would be speaking to some people who have been programming all their lives and they're saying some things and I'm just like, I don't even understand what that means, but yes, I know some programming. that
Yeah.
sort of thing. So it's I think you're right, because that's the approach I take as well.
Yeah.
I go into uni, with a very inquisitive mind, and I aim to just ask as many questions as possible because, you know, there's so much to learn in so little time. And, I'm grateful that I'm in Warwick University as well because the course I'm doing is so diverse and, it's so varied and it's very challenging as well. So if you don't ask questions, there are a lot of important things and there's a lot of important information that you might not catch. So I think that is, some really great advice that you've given. And, I think it will help me and, other people moving forward, that are trying to get into a career in tech, to grow.
Yeah, no, you mentioned. Do you ever feel that sometimes it's not just asking questions, sometimes you don't know which questions to ask?
Yes, yes.
Those are
Sometimes
unknown unknowns.
Yes, exactly. And one thing I realized as well from this university is that, you might have that feeling like, oh, should I ask this question? Is this a really silly question? Or, does this question even align? And sometimes once you ask that question, you realize that almost 10 other people had the same question in mind. And you're just asking the question on behalf of everybody, and everybody is learning from the experience.
Yeah.
So it's
And
wonderful.
this is something that I'm learning a lot from best leaders, the
Mm,
team leaders that I've encountered around site. They're the ones who actually say, sorry, this might be a naive question, but XYZ. And it's very
mm,
important that people who are revered as experts role model that you don't necessarily know everything that's being spoken about, because
yeah.
when you're young and junior you might think, oh, I'm not so sure, should I be? So I really welcome that approach, and I hope more people would adopt that.
Yeah.
Do you have any other messages to young women following in your steps?
I think for me, when I first started this degree, or when I was actually, kind of applying to universities and looking at the different, modules that I'll be doing, they seemed so daunting, and they almost felt like, would I be able to do this? And even when I got the offer and I looked at everything, I was just like, oh my gosh, am I about to, jump in the deep end and, not be able to swim out, that sort of thing. But I realized that, the more effort I put into it in terms of, taking time out every single day to understand something little, and, and just putting the time in, and continuously telling myself that no matter what it is, I'll be able to understand it, no matter how hard it seems, and no matter how daunting, like, a research paper is, or no matter how scary some sort of theory is,
Yeah.
the more time I put into it, the easier it is to understand. And
Yeah.
that's something that I carry on, that I think I might carry on, for the rest of my life, even when I enter my career, because you do get, like you said, you can't understand everything, and sometimes you do get faced with situations whereby there's so much that needs to be learned in such a short period of time. But is that mindset that, I can do anything that I put my mind to, that kind of that I'm carrying with myself, and I'm hoping to put into this career that I'm about to walk into, and what I also use in my degree as well. So I think
No, I
that would
think
be something that I would
Mhm.
advise a lot of people to do.
Yeah, this is actually like it resonates with me quite a lot, and thank you for sharing that.
So, I wanted to ask, are there any lessons you've learned along the way that you would like to share, in your journey of being a data scientist?
Yeah, so absolutely. Now growing in my career, I'm still learning that, right? But I'm still trying to understand the right balance, or strike the right balance between guiding and coaching, and the sort of hands-on work. So data science is inherently a practical application. It cannot be just a data science consultant means you actually sit down and code, right? It doesn't mean that you go and tell somebody how to do the data science, because ultimately that is driven by what data you have, what computational resources do you have, what is the problem at hand, what is the velocity and the nature of that phenomenon that you're trying to model and predict and optimize. So now being growing teams within that means that being able to help others, and you need to sort of expectation is that you would multiply their effect. It's not just helping when somebody's stuck, but also helping proactively so that they're not stuck, or they're finding that joy of discovering those patterns and figuring it out along the way. So for me, I think the main lesson when I was and this is not just data scientists, when I was organizing next generation programmers, finding that right balance. I wanted to go and teach kids, but at the same time I had 9 other people that I needed to coordinate. And how do you balance this out? And if you stay too detached in sort of organizing, and women would tend to be really good at that. So I think a lot of often you don't stay on an expert path, you end up being people management path as you grow in your role in tech.
Mm.
And that is actually like a difficult decision for me, because if I go along that side, then it means that I will eventually, with time, I'm going to lose the grounding that I have along that expertise that brought me in that place in the first place. So I think it's being able to be in a role that combines both, and being able to lead the teams while also ensuring that you get that hands-on expertise.
Oh, that's very insightful.
So
That's very
that's,
insightful.
I think, the lessons that I'm learning and organizing. So just because you're good at organizing something doesn't mean you necessarily need to do that. That's another
Yes.
thing.
Yes, definitely, definitely. I always see, having good organizational skills and people management skills as a support for your technical skills, rather than, I mean, it is still a worthy path to follow because it's very rewarding in that sense. Because I've organized a few events as well. I was a student ambassador at the university, and I really loved it. It was just something that was wonderful for me. But then, the more I've started learning really technical things, the more joy I gain from actually organizing teams to do the technical things, so that I can actually utilize both at the same time, both skills at the same time. So it's wonderful that you shared that. Thank you so much.
I really enjoyed our conversation. I just wanted to ask you about your plans on next steps.
At the moment, I'm applying for different roles. I'm looking at really technical roles as well. Sorts of software development, and roles that require Python and C++. And although I sometimes I see the job descriptions and I get really scared because I'm just like, what if they give me a psychometric test that's just above my head and I don't know what to do. But I don't let that scare me because I know that that's something I want to do, and I keep telling my siblings actually that I want to be a programmer, and it's just something I want to be a programmer. That's what I say to myself. So at the moment I'm just applying for different roles, um and I'm just trying to get my foot in the door. I'm applying for internships. I'm applying for graduate schemes as well, and I'm also applying for some experienced roles in sales engineering, and different things. So I'm just, putting all my eggs in every single basket that fits with my IT goals, and hopefully something, fingers crossed, something good that is meant for me will come to me.
I fully believe into that. And also, just looking back a little bit, for me, it was so important. Is it the right internship? And then if you got more than one offer, deciding between the company and you think, should I go for the one that pays better or the one that's more reputable, or is it both?
Mm,
Now I realize that actually what I should be worrying, or using my worry credits to, is to thinking, is even in that internship with the company that I nobody heard about, and that doesn't really pay me, that does it actually, am I going to get there, the does it have the right mentor for me, that somebody who would actually invest some time to teaching me, or do they expect me to be already pre-trained? And that's the sort of the balance within that. And uh, sometimes it's so having a conversation with them in the interview process is actually also useful.
mm.
Like, what training and opportunities would I get? What would you expect me to do? And what can I expect that you would teach me to do? That is actually it was pretty bold thing for me to be able to do when I was undergraduate, but looking back at it, I wish I did. and
I'll
and
I'll definitely keep that in mind.
yeah, Yeah, because ultimately it is a learning experience,
Mm.
and you want to position just that. So I wish you best of luck.
Thank you so
I would
much.
be, let's stay in touch, and I would be delighted to hear how you get on. Also, I think there's a big pressure on people who are doing the master's degree to think, okay, I need to do my coursework and I also need to get a job at the end of the day. I- it's okay. If you need to do your coursework, do your coursework. The 2 weeks or 2 months that you need, that you would be later with your applications, don't mean the end of the world.
True, true, true. We had this discussion, earlier that, it's kind of, especially when there are there's so much to learn in so little time, and there are, a lot of deadlines and a lot to read. So it's like, you know, it's hard to find the balance between your job search and actually, doing the work at hand. So I'm glad that, I'm glad for that piece of advice, and definitely I'll just take it one step at a time,
Yeah.
and do the most I can with the little time that I have. That wraps up our session today for Talking Tech Women and Girls in ICT. Thank you so much, Torgan. I really enjoyed our chat today. Thank you so much to our viewers for watching. Thank you.